How you doing? And welcome back to Taekwondo, bro. Today we're going to be talking about training martial arts starting like from childhood versus picking it up in your teens and then into your adulthood. And I'm just going to talk from experience because I joined at 7 years old, but when I was an instructor, I also trained people who were joining in their teens and a couple who were joining as adults too. So, I'll just kind of tell you certain things that kind of pop up for each individual group. So let's start it off with training martial arts as a child. So look at some of the advantages and some of the harder parts, maybe some disadvantages, if you could call them that. So advantage number one is going to be that your body is going to be super athletic and adapted to it. So if you're doing all this martial arts training, all this conditioning, think of it this way. You're doing a lot of push-ups, a lot of calisthenics, body weight type exercises to build strength, right? You're doing a lot of flexibility to increase your mobility. You're doing a lot of balance stuff because you're going to be kicking on one leg and a lot of different things for stamina. So it's good to be in shape, but it also makes it easier to be in really good shape later on. So you're just going to be ahead of the game. If you were to compare somebody who joined at, at the age of 18 versus someone who joined at 15 at the age of 18, there's going to be a world of difference between those two people just because the cumulative advantage that the kid would have as going up in it. Another advantage is that you have way more time to get accustomed and more experience. So starting early, if you have any comparison point for the most part, they're just going to be more technically sound, more advanced because they've had way more experience. Now that experience might not be as hardcore because when you're a kid, you're not training at the same intensity as an adult, right? But you just have so much more time in it, and I've seen it where you have these people who join as kids, and by the time they're adults, they're extremely good at it. They're extremely adapted to the athleticism required, and that's that. You also have the other advantage of most people who end up in fights are younger. They tend to be in school, maybe in middle school, high school, in college. That's when a lot of kind of trivial situations might erupt that you need to defend yourself. So if you're looking at it from a self-defense aspect, you'd also be more protected during those times that you might need it. And then, I'd say maybe a disadvantage is that a lot of kids who start training martial arts, they don't make it the transition. There's a transition period where things go from kind of a more relaxed, still serious but more fun atmosphere to a little bit more intense, and some people, they don't take that switch well and they end up quitting or they'll fade off and stop training. So that's that. Let's talk about kind of joining in your teen years and kind of 13 to 18 or something like that. So when I was an instructor, I taught people who were joining into the adult class at that age group. Some of them were siblings of other people who joined. Some of them wanted to learn how to defend themselves and fight, and they would come in. Maybe some of them got bullied or beat up or something. They came in to fix that. Everyone has their own reasons for coming in. The one disadvantage is that they're playing catch up with everyone else in the class physically because they don't have that conditioning for the most part unless they're an athlete. And even if they're an athlete, flexibility and different stamina skills, they're different. So it takes some time to get used to, especially the flexibility and especially for guys because a lot of guys don't really stretch that much. And even when they do, it might do it only as a little bit of a warm-up to prevent cramps. So they're not really trying to get splits or head height kicks. So you have to deal with that. You also have to deal with some flinchiness that they might have. They're not really used to fighting. But that's just mainly a rookie problem. And overall, I think over time they will, especially because they're really young, they're still going to adapt to it and they'll get really used to it. But they just have to catch up with everybody else in the class who usually has more experience on them. So you might have somebody who's, maybe a sizable amount smaller than this newbie, but they might be way better. So in sparring, you have to watch it and always kind of match them up the right way. Because even though they might have physical strength on somebody else in the class who has more experience, they might have a hard time against them just because they don't know what they're doing yet. And then, let's talk about we had a couple adults, older adults join in, and it's kind of more the same for them. I don't really know exactly what it's like to be in their shoes yet. I'm not at that age group yet, but the hardest thing for them seemed to be flexibility and then sparring longer rounds because they just had to build up to it. And I say it a lot, sparring is super cardio. It's really hard and you'll gas yourself out. And then stretching, if you've spent your whole life like not stretching, you're gonna have to make some headwind there, really get going. But besides that, they tend to enjoy a more technical type of training, I see. And they do learn well, and they'll get to it. They just have to make up for that time that they weren't training. So that's kind of the main differences between them, is the physicality, I'd say. Experience cumulatively is one thing, and with time you can kind of work to catch up to some of the higher, kind of more elite people in your gym or whatever. When the adults would join in, like as adults though, they would have this level of focus that you usually don't find in students, and I kind of credit that more to just their life experience. Like, yeah, they might be new to martial arts, but they're more cognizant of what the limits of their body are, like where some young person might just injure themselves by going too far or something. They're not going to do that. They know their limits for the most part. And I'd say they're also a little more relaxed. Like, maybe, you might get some gym drama egos between some younger people who are trying to be the best. Usually I find the adults are way more chill. But that's the thing. And I'd say with teenagers too, they have this kind of dynamism to them. Like, when someone's a kid and they join up, it becomes part of their life, and they may be really dedicated to it, but they don't notice it. They kind of take it maybe a little for granted. Like, someone joining as a teenager or young adult, they kind of enter in with, they don't take it for granted. They're like usually super excited to be there, and because they've grown up seeing martial arts at some point, and they're like, I want that, as opposed to somebody who may have grown up always kind of having it. Like, they don't understand what it's like to be without it. So I think that could be a different little kind of mind game between them. But overall, I would say, listen, if the earliest you can start is the best if you enjoy doing it. So if you have kids or something, when they're old enough, maybe enroll them into something if it's nearby or it's a good, really athletic place. And then if you are older and you want to join now, they say there's two good times to plant a tree. The best is 20 years ago, and the second best is right now. So, whenever you decide that you want to, is a good opportunity. Don't worry about like what you could have done. And there's a lot of really great people. Like, some people think that the super best are always the ones who's trained as youth. I mean, a lot of them are. Like, don't get me wrong, they get really good. But if you want to get super good like them, you can catch up. You can just train really hard. You'll get there to that same level of like mastery that they will eventually get to. But yeah, that's a really cool part. And I think growing up with martial arts is definitely something that's really fun. So it's really athletic, and it's way harder than most sports. So you're gonna get pretty fit, and it's a different type of fitness. It's really functional, and it builds a lot of discipline too, regardless of when you join. That's what I would say. I've been watching a lot of videos online about this topic too, and they kind of reflect a pretty similar kind of a assessment where, joining young, I think the biggest advantage is that you're so used to the discipline that you'd grow up and your character is shaped by it. And then also you're so used to the physically taxing parts of it that it may seem really easy to you just because you've adapted so much to it. Those are the two things. Joining later, obviously if you're joining, you have a good degree of self-discipline because you're putting yourself through something hard to try to improve yourself, and that takes discipline. And also the physicality, like, listen, you'll get there eventually. So I would say that's it. Joining whatever age you can is good for you, but that's the difference between I don't want to go rant on about that. I think I've covered it well, kind of what the disadvantages are and what are little idiosyncrasies of each group that I've seen. Maybe if you've joined as a kid, a teenager, or like a full adult, not like a young adult, like someone who's like has a career, like not like in college. Like, a lot of college kids, they kind of see themselves as the same as high schoolers, but just a little bit bigger. But yeah, that's what I mean. So comment down below about your experience. Let me know like how you feel. Maybe there's something I missed. Maybe something you like to add is waiting for you in the comments. So thanks for watching, and just like always, get out there, train, have a good time, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that bell. Yeah, hit the bell so you get notified. Anyway, thanks.